Welcome to episode 5 of I Read X-Men, where we're going to be covering X-Men number 22 to 26. This is Randy.
And Caitlin.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
Let's jump right in with X-Men number 22, Divided, We Fall. This is July of 1966, written by Roy Thomas and art by Werner Roth, Nom de Plume, Jake Avon. So on the cover there we have a new supervillain.
Ooh.
It's Count Nefaria and his band of rogues.
He's a fancy little dandy, isn't he?
I know. Let's learn more about him. We start the issue and we have the X-Men, of course, training in the Danger Room. And they've fought a lot of robots lately with the Sentinels and the Dominus robots. So Xavier is like, you know what? I'm going to train you against robots. So he introduces them to his new robot, Colosso. So Colosso is clearly a colossus towering over them like 20 feet high. Xavier has them attack the robot, and they learn that only as a team can they defeat this robot.
Aww.
Yeah. They realize that the robot was tracking their movements via his headpiece with cameras or something. So Jean Grey gets the smart idea to steal Xavier's little blanket and wrap it over Colosso's head. So now Colosso can't see, can't attack the X-Men. So they tie it off over his head. Then Iceman puts a block of ice over his head, and that's how they stop Colosso.
All you need is a blanket to take down a giant robot.
A blanket and ice.
Blanket and ice.
The combo together.
And a team.
So Xavier is very happy at their performance. So he yet again gives the X-Men another vacation, since all of their last ones have been cut short. The last one being cut short by the Mimic. So we have Warren asking Jean to dinner.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. But then she invites Scott to come along with them.
Ooh.
And Scott accepts.
Oh,
because,
awkward triangle.
Well, he's kind of like, this may be the last time I get to spend time with her. Scott thinks that Angel and Marvel Girl are a couple at this point, but he still wants to have some quality time with Jean. So, makes sense. Mm-hmm. But then in the last panel, we have this very strange moment. Xavier kind of breaks down. He just has a moment of weakness, and he's just lamenting it that he can't use his legs. He's anguished over that.
Quite a face palm he's doing right there.
That's right. But now we jump to the nation's capital, where we meet our new villain, Count Nefaria. He is a former Iron Man villain. That's where a lot of people would know him before in the Marvel Universe. He runs a gang called the Magia, and he has 5 superhuman lieutenants at his disposal currently, which we will meet later on in the episode.
Lieutenant.
That's right.
He's rocking a pretty cool monocle.
Yeah, and a cape.
And a cape.
And the vest.
Oh.
Basically like...
everything you need to be cool.
Basically like Dracula without being a vampire.
Okay.
Count Nefaria is reading the newspaper, as you did back in the day, and he's reading all about the X-Men. And he decides that he wants them for his allies. Because he's like, they exist in a world that hates and fears them. They'll join up with me, no problem. So we've introduced our villain, and now we cut back to the X-Men on their vacations. So we start with Bobby and Hank. They're going to meet up with their ladies, Vera and Zelda, because they're going on a movie date. Little fun thing happens here where Hank goes up to Vera. At least from the back, it looks like Vera. But when it goes to the front, oh no, it's a dude. Everybody had long hair in the 60s.
Oops.
Oopsie daisy.
I'm sorry, sir. You're not my girlfriend.
It's pretty much. It's a little fun fact. So after Hank mistakes the guy for his gal, they then go to see a James Bond movie. They're going to see Thunderball. Then we cut to Jean, Warren, and Scott while they're finishing their dinner together. Jean is worrying if Scott is ever going to love her, and Scott kind of broods on the same subject. So they part ways. Warren drives Marvel Girl home, and Cyclops is walking and sulking by himself. But as he's walking next to Central Park, and he sees what he thinks is Jean Grey in her costume floating above Central Park. So he, of course, goes to investigate. But then, cut back to Jean, after she is dropped off by Warren, she hears a radio report of about an X-Men flying over Central Park. So she actually suits up and then goes to investigate herself. But there, she's then attacked by the first lieutenant of Count Nefaria, Plant Man. And he knocks her out with some chloroform gas. Very simple. Should have been chlorophyll gas.
Waka waka.
Because he's a plant man. Okay, so as Cyclops is searching for who he thinks is Jean, he then sees Angel flying through the sky. But it's not the real Angel, because we see the real Warren. He's in his car. He's got the radio jamming, but then he hears another news bulletin about an X-Men flying over the park. And so then he suits up, goes to the park, but then he gets attacked by the Scarecrow, another minion of Nefaria. Scarecrow can just he has a bunch of crows that he has trained. Very literal interpretation of a scarecrow. You can see them perched on his shoulders. So.
Cool powers, dude.
It's not even a power.
Nope.
We're just saying that he can train birds very well.
Yes. He's skilled in bird training.
You could become a supervillain because you can train birds to drop a net on someone with real superpowers. Cool powers, bro.
Cool.
Hank and Bobby are on their date, but then they hear a similar report, and then Hank decides to call it a night early, and then just kind of check on this report. So he leaves a date early. He goes to Central Park, and then he goes to the zoo portion, and he fights the porcupine. He's just got a bunch of quills around him that can shoot gas, shoot quills. He's got quill powers. It's pretty crazy. Beast tries to jump on him, but he can't because he's spiky.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
Yeah. So Beast gets captured. So then Iceman goes back to the hotel that him and Hank were sharing and realizes Hank hasn't showed up. And then he turns on the radio and hears, again, similar report. But this time he hears a report about Iceman over Central Park. And he's like, wait a minute, I'm Iceman. So he goes and investigates.
Why were they in a hotel?
Because they're on vacation. They're just spending their vacation in the city. Because
Oh,
remember, the mansion is in Westchester,
Westchester,
which
right.
is not in downtown New York. So they're
Okay.
just vacationing in downtown New York.
okay. I guess I thought it was closer, that you wouldn't require a hotel.
Nah, that's just what they're doing.
Okay.
Guys' night.
Stupid.
So Iceman goes to Central Park, and then he is attacked by a rogue called the Eel.
Ooh.
So he's really slippery, and he's also got electricity powers. Very literal, these villains, they are. He's fighting the Eel, but then Cyclops arrives, and then he knocks out the Eel with his optic blast. But then the last rogue arrives, and it's the Unicorn, who looks nothing like a unicorn.
No, I was going to say Cobra or
No.
something.
Yeah.
Or
He's called the Unicorn because he has his horn, air quotes, on his head that shoots like a beam
magical beams.
out of it. It's like a force beam. But you're right, he does kind of look more like a cobra. So everybody's fighting everybody, but then the Eel comes back and he knocks Iceman out. And so everybody, all the X-Men are defeated. The lieutenants take the X-Men to a freighter, and then that freighter is then taken to the fortress of Count Nefaria. Nefaria thinks to himself, and he has to think that he has to keep his 5 lieutenants in line so that they don't try to steal his leadership of his crime gang away from him, because he's had problems with that in the past. So he's kind of keeping that on the back burner. He's like, I know you guys are going to try to...
Usurpers.
Yes. You're going to try to steal this away from me, but I'm always going to be one
Start a
step
coup.
ahead. As you do. So Count Nefaria, he goes to the X-Men. They're all chained up in his fortress, and he offers them a chance to join him, so they could get revenge on a world that hates and fears them. He's trying to play on that, but they, being the heroes they are, refuse. And so then he taunts them by telling them his plan. His plan is that he is going to steal an entire city, Washington, D.C., hold it ransom for $100 million. And he's going to have the X-Men collect the bounty. And it ends on a cliffhanger.
What will happen?
We'll find out in X-Men number 23, To Save a City. Also written by Roy Thomas and art by Werner Roth. He's finally getting billed as himself now. No more Jay Gavin.
Werner.
He is Werner Roth. This was written in August of 1966. Issue number 23 starts with the X-Men being captured by Count Nefaria and him kind of recapping and telling his plan again for everybody who just joined with this issue. And he also said that he plans to blame the X-Men for the crime, so no blame will fall on him. So Nefaria gives them an hour to make up their minds on whether they're going to join him or not. So he goes to set his trap in motion. He has this very advanced machine. That's all we know. He has this machine, and this machine is what can kind of create things out of thin air somehow. It's what creates the image of the X-Men flying over the park in the last issue.
Okay.
And it can kind of create 3D holograms, I'm guessing. It's not very clear. But with this machine, he creates a giant dome over Washington, D.C. It's a clear, crystalline, indestructible dome. People can't get in, people can't get out. So that's how he's holding the city ransom. So using his machine, Count Nefaria creates some fake X-Men. That's just with his machine. They just kind of plop into existence.
The machine does a lot.
I know.
Makes
It's like,
dome,
this is what I don't get. Why do you need the real X-Men if you can create fake X-Men? And these fake X-Men can do stuff. It's not really sure, but
well, maybe just so they won't
comics.
Just so they won't foil his plan.
Maybe, but I mean, these X-Men are completely under his control. So.
Well, true, but he has them captured, so they can't do anything. Yeah.
So the fake X-Men go to the Capitol building, and they present the ransom of $100 million, and they say, if we don't get the money, all of the oxygen is going to be removed from the dome. So then the guards, they attempt to capture these fake X-Men, but then they just kind of flash away in a flash of light, disappear, and the guards are kind of like, I didn't know they had those powers. Those crazy mutants. So then we cut to Xavier. He's in his lab, and he's working on a new invention, and then he's secluded in the lab, so he has no idea what's going on in Washington, D.C., but he gets a phone call from Washington. They tell him the skinny, and then he agrees to help. He tries to contact the X-Men, but he is unable to do so. So, cut back to the X-Men, and then we see Marvel Girl trying to get him free with her powers, but she can't. So, Cyclops gets the bright idea for her to use her telekinesis. Well, first of all, we should say Cyclops has a giant, band over his visor. Mm-hmm. He can't really use it. So she uses her telekinesis to lift the visor up underneath it so it can then blast it away from his head. So now he's got his visor free and he can blast away everybody's shackles. So once they're all free, they're finally able to get in contact with Xavier telepathically, and he mentally gives them instructions as to what to do. So the X-Men then go to confront Count Nefaria, and they say, we're going to join you. You look concerned, Caitlin. Do you have any thoughts on this? Have the X-Men turned evil?
No.
I was just checking. So they agree to join him, and he warns them against the double cross, and he tells them that he has a failsafe on his dome device. Only he knows how to operate the machine that controls the dome, and if anyone else were to attempt it and work the machine wrong, it would blow up. So that's his failsafe.
Really covered off his bases, didn't he?
Yeah. He's got everybody on a short string.
That's why he's the Count.
So the X-Men are then sent to collect the ransom, while Nefaria's previous minions, the Porcupine, Plant Man, Unicorn, Eel, and Scarecrow, agreed to turn against him to steal the money once the X-Men collect it.
Why on earth would he want a new team when he has that awesome lineup?
I don't know, but he knew it was going to happen, and it happened. So Xavier then arrives in Washington, D.C., and he learns of the X-Men's involvement in the ransom from the police. And then, he sends his astral form out to kind of figure out where Count Nefaria is and just try to scope out, just send his astral form out to learn all of his secrets, to see what they're truly up against. So the X-Men travel to the dome. Nefaria can open and close things, so he lets them into the dome to collect the ransom money. And then, of course, they go to the Capitol, they get the money, but then there's a guard who's trigger happy and he starts firing at them. And then the guard attempts to shoot them, which then prompts an angry mob to start throwing bricks at them. And it's just not good for the X-Men.
No.
So then the minions show up and they want to steal the money from the X-Men, so everybody begins to fight everybody. And at the end of the battle, it's the Unicorn who ends up getting the bag full of money. So the Unicorn runs off, and he is then confronted by the military and the X-Men, but then the X-Men get the money back. And Marvel Girl then steals the bag, and she runs off to Nefaria to give him his money. Cut back to Nefaria's castle, where he's monitoring this whole situation. Marvel Girl comes back, gives Nefaria the money, but then out of nowhere, a strange masked man enters the hideout and then starts operating the machine, and then turns off the dome without setting off the bomb.
Who is this strange masked man?
We'll find out in just a moment. So the X-Men then arrive, and then Nefaria gets away with his money, and then the mystery man is then revealed to be Professor X.
What?
But what's this? He's walking?
How can it be?
So, well, first we learned that he was in his astral form, he read Nefaria's mind, learned how to operate the machine, and so that's how he was able to turn it off. But then it's revealed that while he was in his lab, he was inventing a device that allows him to walk, and it uses lightweight, flexible metal braces, and it has a little power pack that clips onto his belt.
Inventive.
I know. So now Xavier can walk
Oh.
from time to time. So Nefaria has gotten away. He's gotten his bag full of cash, and the Unicorn meets up with him, and he's like, "That's my bag of cash." But they're both very surprised when their bag of cash disappears in a puff of light, because that Xavier, he's really sneaky. He used Nefaria's machine to create a fake bag of money, which they then ran off with, and now the X-Men have the money and they're going to return it to the authorities.
Joke's on him.
That's right. So it's also, we learned that Xavier called the Coast Guard, and their names have been cleared. So the X-Men are celebrating their victory, and then Xavier gives Jean a letter that she got in the mail, and she reads it, and then she gets really emotional, and then she tells the X-Men that tomorrow she must leave the team forever.
No.
Which then leads us to our next comic, X-Men number 24, The Plague of the Locust. Who is the Locust?
We'll find out.
Yes, we will. So it's a rather somber start. We have Jean leaving Xavier's school because her parents feel that since she has graduated from Xavier's, that she should attend a more conventional college. So they want her to go to Metro College, that's in New York. And then Angel starts to lament that he couldn't begin to express his feelings for Jean, and Cyclops is kind of having the same feeling. He's thinking that he's never going to see her again because she's going away.
Oh, Warren, you never stood a chance anyway.
So Jean gets a nice little corsage as a parting gift. Who gives someone a corsage? It's like,
Couldn't spring for the bouquet.
yeah, here's a corsage. It'll be dead in a week. But thanks for coming. So She is then driven to college by Angel and Cyclops, and they're just wondering what's going to become of Jean. The whole ride, Scott broods over never being able to express his feelings for her, and then Warren muses on how she's going to be attending classes with the Human Torch, because he goes to Metro College too, Human Torch from Fantastic Four. And so he wonders, is Jean going to date the Human Torch? But she tells them that, she's not there to be a superhero. She's going to college for an education. So
That's what everyone says when they go to college.
yes. So then Jean goes to register. She meets a new guy named Ted Roberts. And Ted kind of shows her the ropes on college. So as you can tell, Cyclops gets very morose when she sees Jean walk off with Ted.
Come on, Scott.
So Scott believes that he's lost her for good. Cut to elsewhere in a wheat field. The new villain has appeared, the Locust. And this is just an old dude in a Locust costume. He's dressed up like a giant bug. More on that later. So the Locust, he intends, this is the best, one of the best plans I've heard so far. He intends to create an army of gigantic locusts that are going to eat all of the crops. And then he's going to receive praise and accolades by saving the day when they get out of control. So everyone's going to be like, oh, you're such a great scientist. You saved us from this giant plague of mutant locusts. Wow, we never realized how great you were. And then he gets money and tenure, I guess.
Tenure. Yes, because these plans never fail. He's creating the problem so he can solve the problem.
Exactly. So his attack gets the attention of the X-Men. They go to investigate. And the X-Men find and attack all of these gigantic locusts. But as the battle progresses, the area is sprayed with a crop duster loaded with insecticide by some of the people of the town. And the X-Men escape, but they grab one of the locusts to study, because Xavier wanted to check it out. We cut to Metro College, where we find Jean at a coffee shop, and where she sees a gentleman called Dr. Hopper.
I wonder who that could be.
Well, he's an eccentric former professor at the college. And so he starts to lash out at some of the students because they are taunting him. And Jean learns that he was fired for his bizarre theories about insect mutation, and he now works at a chemical company. Wonder what he's doing with those chemicals.
I don't know. I don't think he's making giant locusts or anything.
Well, we do learn that Hopper is the Locust, and that he has created a device that will make the insects grow to fantastic sizes. And he can also control them with the antenna that are on the top of his costume.
Okay.
So we learn it's not just a costume for show. Because the antenna he can basically talk to the insects and tell them what to destroy.
Okay, but why the shirt and the pants?
Well, we'll find out later.
Okay.
He still has a few tricks up his sleeve.
All right.
So he swears revenge on the X-Men and all of those who mocked him. Pretty basic. Xavier is examining that gigantic grasshopper, and he figures out that its size is not the result of normal mutation. Because they were like, is this locust a mutant?
Like us?
No. It is the result of artificial means. They were also wondering, could the locust be a mutant? And then Xavier is like, no, the X-Copter has a portable cerebro unit in it. And
The doy?
it confirmed that the locust is just a normal guy, not a mutant. So we're safe there. So then Jean shows up at the school, and she tells them of Dr. Hopper and how she suspects his involvement in this craziness. So Xavier uses his credentials and goes to Hopper's job, and he gets shown all of his lab and his work. So he finds a map with locations of everywhere the locust has attacked, and some locations he hasn't yet.
I thought those eyebrows. I think that's just like a thing on the side of his face. I thought his eyebrows were like super out of control. Sorry, continue.
So the X-Men go out, they fight the locust one more time, and then the army shows up with flamethrowers, starts killing them off again. So Xavier, he basically finds out where his mobile lab is. So him and the X-Men go there. And while Hopper's inside of his lab experimenting again, Xavier shows up disguised as a wise old man. He's walking using his mechanical legs.
Yeah.
And I love his costume is just a beard and a cape
And a hat.
and a nice hat and a walking stick.
Yeah.
You're going to trust the wise old man that walks up to you randomly and tells you not to be a giant locust. So
But he had a kind face.
So he tries to convince Hopper to renounce his evil ways, but he fails. Even though he could just easily use his mental powers to say,
Don't do
wait
this.
here until the authorities show up.
Right.
So the Locust then releases even bigger insects. Gigantic cockroaches is what it looks like.
Whoa.
Are those cockroaches?
That's what I would say.
Or stink bugs? Not
Oh.
really sure.
That'd be the worst.
Well, anyway, he's got these gigantic bugs, and he commands them to destroy the X-Men. But Jean uses her telepathic powers, and she ties his antenna into a knot. So then the bugs, he can't control them anymore. And these giant bugs think that Hopper is a giant locust that they want to eat. So they start attacking him. So he runs into his lab, and so then the bugs start attacking the lab, and they destroy it. And then it starts to fall into the ravine that it's parked by. But they save him from falling to his death. And so the Locust finally breaks down and listens to the professor. And he says, I'm going to turn myself over to the authorities. And then Cyclops wonders if Jean will go back to college and forget about the X-Men altogether.
Scott is exhausting.
He's brooding.
Yeah. That scene reminded me of the second Jurassic Park movie when the T-Rexes are pushing
It is very close to
the
it.
camper over the cliff because they stole the baby T-Rex.
That's probably where he got the idea from.
Maybe. I'm sure.
You can find X-Men behind every corner.
That's right.
Okay, we have 2 more comics left, and it's a 2-parter story. Are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Okay. We have X-Men number 25, The Power and the Pendant. And we see that it's featuring the menace of El Tigre.
Tigre.
I'm excited for El Tigre. I don't know about you.
Well, his name makes me more than excited.
So,
Ecstatic.
Professor Xavier and the X-Men are driving Jean back to college, and they come across an orphanage that has caught on fire. And so the X-Men, they suit up, and then they proceed to save the orphans. They save the orphanage from the giant fire. And then once the fire is done and saved, everyone tries to thank the X-Men for their help, but they disappear as quickly as they appeared. I guess they're trying to stay out of the limelight.
Oh, okay.
They heard sirens coming, and people still are kind of leery about the
A
X-Men.
little on edge.
So,
Any bricks thrown at him again?
at Metro College, Scott and Warren note Jean's classmate, Ted,
Ted.
and they see that he has an interest in her. So Scott deals with the idea of trying to get over her, possibly by leaving the X-Men. And then we have Warren here as he's driving everyone back from the college. He's just like, I'm going to date as many girls as I can. Screw Jean. No, not really. But he's just like, I'm going to find romance elsewhere.
I think Xavier's just back there laughing because he's reading their thoughts. And
Pretty much. That's what I like to think. Okay, so then we cut to Central America, where we have El Tigre leading an expedition to find the lost Mayan treasure of Kukulkan.
Kukulkan. Sounds like a bird call. Kukulkan, Kukulkan.
Yes, it does. So El Tigre, which is the coolest name in comics, El Tigre finds his treasure, but then a little piece of a pendant, the pendant of Kukulkan. I feel like every time we say Kukulkan, there should be a bird call in the background. So from now on, you'll hear that in the podcast. Kukulkan. Okay. So El Tigre finds the treasure and a piece of the pendant of Kukulkan, and he puts it in his shirt pocket. He doesn't know what it is. Then that night, his little guides, Tolak and Ramon, they turn on him because they just want to steal his treasure. But then El Tigre surprises them and himself by using mental bolts from his mind. And then he binds them and he has them swear their loyalty to him or face death. And so, of course, they're just like, yes, we'll join you. Later, the fragment of the amulet falls out of his pocket, and El Tigre realizes that that's what's giving him this power. He returns to the pyramid, and then the amulet starts to impart its origins to him. So it is part of the sacred pendant of Kukulkan. And when there's another fragment of it. So when the two fragments are joined, it gives whoever wears it the power of Kukulkan. So El Tigre decides that he is going to find the other half of this pendant no matter what. And so he sets off to find it. At Xavier's, Cerebro starts to go off. Xavier starts to walk downstairs using his leg braces, but the power supply fails. So he is rescued by these weird safety coils that just shoot out of the wall. But he installed them just in case this happened. No one's going to fall down the stairs in this house.
Nope.
So,
Smart thinking.
Way to go, Xavier.
That's right.
So the X-Men go and they check Cerebro, and they learn of the coming of a powerful force that is arriving in New York City. So Beast, Angel, Cyclops, and Iceman travel to the city as El Tigre and his men arrive in the city. So they all kind of narrowly miss each other, finding each other in the city, but then all the X-Men meet back at their hotel, and they're just like, no, I haven't been able to find anything. So Scott's like, I'm going to go check the streets one more time. And he goes outside, and he grabs a newspaper, and while he's reading it, he bumps into someone, causes his glasses to be knocked off, and of course, another mutant mob starts chasing Scott because his glasses fell off.
Scott ruins everything.
So he flees from a group of mutant haters. He returns to the X-Men's hotel room, and he hears a news report about a strange brawl that broke out in a nearby restaurant. The report identifies 3 strange individuals who did not participate in the brawl, and Scott recognizes them as men he saw earlier on the streets.
Because they don't stick out or anything with the sombreros,
The giant
the ponchos,
sombreros
and the
ponchos,
bright colors.
Exactly. So Xavier then comes in telepathically, and he informs the X-Men that he has mentally tracked El Tigre and his minions. El Tigre then kind of detects Xavier's probes and then blocks him out, because he's getting stronger with that power of the pendant of Kukulkan. So Xavier then learns of their location, and he sends the X-Men to confront everybody. So the X-Men arrive at a nearby museum, and that's when they decide to split up to search for El Tigre. As we all know, splitting up is a bad idea.
It is.
So Beast and Iceman get knocked out by his minions, and Angel gets struck down by a blow dart. Way to go, blow dart. Didn't see that coming. And Cyclops has tracked down El Tigre, but then they're both spotted by a museum security guard. El Tigre uses his mental powers and then commands the guard to keep Cyclops at gunpoint. And then El Tigre goes off to search the rest of the museum, and he finds the other half of the pendant, and then he combines the two together. He then becomes enveloped in this bright flash of light, and then El Tigre is no more. He is garbed in an ancient clothing, and he announces that he is now the living embodiment of the Mayan god Kukulkan. Which leaves us on a cliffhanger for the next issue. X-Men number 26, Holocaust.
Whoa. Pretty intense cover.
It is. Will Kukulkan be the death of us all?
No.
We'll have to read on to find out.
We will. But I'm going to say no.
Okay. You're calling it now?
I'm calling it now.
Okay. All right. Well, here we go. Professor X starts us off by using his Cerebro unit to see and then he kind of sees the transformation of El Tigre into Kukulkan. And Cyclops, we cut back to Cyclops at the museum. He stops the guard with his optic blast and then re-engages Kukulkan. But the problem is his blast is then redirected back onto himself by Kukulkan because he has awesome energy powers. He's like he has the powers of a god. So Kukulkan's goons, Tolak and Ramon, they attempt to take the amulet from him.
Oh, and he bitch slaps him. Look at that.
Yeah, totally. Fuck. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. They attempt to take the amulet, but then he knocks them out, and then he uses the power of the sun to stop them, and he keeps them at bay. So
Superman of him.
Well, this is the neat thing. He then just decides to walk to the roof of the museum, uses his powers, and he creates like an energy shield around him, and then just floats off into the sky, and he heads back to Central America. Just like, screw you guys.
Later.
I'm going home. So,
smell you later.
Xavier uses his mental powers to revive the X-Men, and they return to the mansion. Xavier then calls Jean to tell her what's happening. This is the funny thing. She is concerned that the professor chose to call her on the telephone instead of using telepathy. So she wonders if she's even still considered part of the X-Men anymore.
Well, you left the school.
So then Ted Roberts. Have you met Ted? Ted enters the room and introduces Jean to Calvin Rankin. We remember who Calvin Rankin is, right?
Yes, the name sounds familiar.
The Mimic.
The Mimic. Okay, yes. Oh, that's right, Calvin.
And then he inquires, like, have we met before? And Jean, she keeps the ruse up because they erased his mind. But then he begins to doubt her claims. Story for another day. So then Jean travels to the X-Mansion, where the group is being briefed all about the history of Kukulkan. So Xavier tells them that in the past, when the power of Kukulkan's amulet was abused, it caused a gigantic volcanic eruption that buried the city with molten lava. And then Xavier orders the X-Men to travel to the city of San Rico, where they're going to confront and stop Kukulkan. So Jean expresses concern over Scott when she hears that he was injured in battle. She's like, oh no, Scott was hurt? Is he okay? But then, he walks back into the room, and he's just like, I'm good. Let's go off to battle. So, we see Kukulkan arriving in San Rico, and then he starts using his powers to clear away all the vegetation, and he reveals his ancient city, and also he reveals this gigantic serpent statue that has a giant stone on the top of it. And this stone is kind of what gives him his powers. So Kukulkan sits on his throne, and then he starts using his mental powers to enslave all the people of San Rico. So everybody who works there, farmers, policemen, whatever, they start coming to his town and start bringing his city back to life, but they're all kind of under a mental sway. So the X-Men arrive in San Rico, and they start to travel to Kukulkan's kingdom. They avoid attacks from various wild animals along the way, but then they make it to Kukulkan and just start attacking him. So they find that his powers are a little too strong, but they notice that the sunstone on top of that serpent statue is the source of his power. So Iceman tries to use his ice to cover it up and block it from the rays of the sun. Almost like how they stopped Colosso a couple.
Only they had a blanket.
A blanket would be more ideal than ice, because light can still get through ice.
True.
Where's Xavier when you need him?
Right.
Then Cyclops attempts to blast Kukulkan, but he dodges out of the way, and oh no, he blasts Angel instead, who was flying nearby. So then Kukulkan blasts Cyclops aside, and then he attempts to stop Iceman and Beast from affecting the power of his Sunstone, but his blast hit the base of the statue, and it hits a fault line, and it causes the whole ground to start to crumble away. So then, cut off from the sun's rays, Kukulkan reverts back to our pal El Tigre.
El Tigre.
And so the X-Men pick him up, they pick Warren up, and they flee. On the way out, Warren comes to, but then he briefly accuses Cyclops of blasting him on purpose.
Oh, I was going to say that too. Gotta eliminate that competition.
Yeah. He's like, it was Cyclops. He did that to me on purpose because of Marvel Girl. You love her too. Ugh, and he passes out again.
Oh, it's awkward for everyone else involved there.
So Our set of comics ends today with Cyclops knowing that Angel is delusional, and he's pretty sure that the rest of the X-Men know that he's delusional, but he walks away once again doubting himself. Did I really mean to shoot him? And there it is.
Oh.
That has been X-Men number 22 through 26. What'd you think?
Scott's got some things to work through. That's what I think.
Yes, everybody kind of has a singular perspective for a while until they start to grow up more and do other stories. But
Although I will say I did like the El Tigre story. I think it's my favorite one of all of them.
yeah, El Tigre is pretty cool. They're actually trying to do something with Jean Grey now instead of just being the girl.
Right.
You know, she's got her own story with the chance of more stories being at a different place, but still helping out the X-Men. And there's just more stories to come. So we hope that you liked reading along with us for these few X-Men issues. Join us next time for episode 6, where we will start with the return of the Mimic.
Calvin.
Our boy Calvin is going to make a return.
Right.
For I Read X-Men, this has been Randy.
And Caitlin.
Be sure to check us out on Twitter at I Read X-Men. And subscribe to us on the YouTubes. See you next time.
Bye.